Hey, and welcome to the most anticipated event of the year, AppSpeak's Panorama 2021. My name is Mackenzie Bruckner, and I actually graduated with a Communication Studies degree from Appalachian State in 2018, which seems like a really long time ago. And I'm so excited to be able to have the opportunity to work with the communication department again and present three fantastic student speakers this evening. And first off, we have Audrey Norton, who is a senior communications major with a focus in public relations, here to talk to you about unreasonable body images and gender expectations in film.
Hi, I'm Audrey. I'm going to be talking to you today about the problems with romance films. Sorry. So, to start off, when I was younger, I used to believe all sorts of crazy things. Things I had no idea where the concept came from, but I was absolutely certain that they were true. Like, I used to believe that if my mom hit the garage door opener in her car, it would open no matter how far away we were. We could be hundreds of miles from home, and I would yell at her to close the garage before someone stole my Razor scooter. I also used to believe that if there were monsters in my room at night, I could hide under the blanket as if it would shield me from the boogeyman. I know plenty of people that believed if you ate watermelon seeds, a watermelon would grow in your stomach. Or if you crossed your eyes for too long, they would get stuck like that. At one point, we all believed in the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, or Santa Claus. My point in saying all of this is that children are incredibly impressionable and gullible. Now, what do kids spend most of their time doing nowadays? Watching television. Now, the average kid spends about 32 hours a week watching TV. So you know that most of that misinformation comes from TV shows, commercials, and movies. So, what's the one thing we all watched as kids? Disney movies. Specifically, Disney princess movies. Now, if you were anything like my brother, you had two lovely sisters that forced you to watch Disney princess movies. So, he got his fill. Now, I want you to think for just a second about some of the storylines in these Disney princess movies. I'll start off with an example, Beauty and the Beast. A girl sacrifices herself to be held hostage by this beast and ends up falling in love with him. They end happily ever after. Cute, right? Actually, no, that's called Stockholm Syndrome, which is a psychological response wherein a captive begins to sympathize with their captor. I'll give you another example, Snow White. At the beginning of Snow White, she meets Prince Charming and quite literally books it the other direction. But at the end of the movie, she wakes up to find that he's kissed her out of this cursed slumber, and so she just wraps her arms around his neck and he carries her off into the sunset. So now we're teaching our little girls to run off with boys that kiss them in their sleep. Now, I want you to think about just how wide of an audience these movies have. The first Frozen movie alone made $1.27 billion in theaters. And the second one made only half that and still set box office records. Millions and millions of little girls and boys will see these films and think, oh yeah, it's totally normal for me to fall in love with someone within days or even hours of meeting them. Now, that maybe you're a boy, and maybe you're an only child, and you didn't watch Disney princess movies, yeah, okay. You were probably shown films like The Avengers, wherein every single male character has an 8-pack. And no one looks like Scarlett Johansson. I mean, come on. And have you ever seen a Disney princess with a realistic body? Most of them have these teeny tiny waists, these narrow hips, and these long, thin legs. Oh goodness, I'm losing my mic. Anyways, technical difficulties. So yeah, they have these unrealistic body standards on Disney princesses. And let me tell you a story. My sister decided that she wanted to go as Princess Jasmine for Halloween one year. She had decided that Jasmine was the absolute prettiest princess. So my mom and I took her to a Halloween costume store, and she looked at the package with Jasmine on it and turned to me and my mom and said, "I don't want to go as Princess Jasmine anymore." And we said, "Well, why not?" And she said, "Well, I don't look like that. My stomach's not that flat. My friends will all make fun of me." Having this mindset leads to incredibly negative body image, as well as social anxiety, self-consciousness in intimate relationships, or in more serious cases, depression and eating disorders. Now, when these kids get older, they're met with new, more lifelike films that add to these already unrealistic expectations. Films like Crazy Stupid Love. If you haven't seen it, I'll sum it up for you. Emma Stone decides that she wants to get drunk and have a one-night stand. So she goes to a bar, she meets Ryan Gosling, and they go back to his house. She gets absolutely trashed, and he just puts her to bed. If that's not even remotely unrealistic to you, they then enter a long-term healthy relationship, and at the end of the movie, she introduces him to her parents. Now, while this is ideal, it's not at all a realistic situation. In real life, this would have ended in sexual assault, which affects 1 in 5 women, a third of those before the age of 18, which is even better because this film was PG-13, so you know most of that theater was teenage girls. Now, most of these movies that target this age group can be summed up in a few sentences. Boy meets girl, girl and boy quickly fall in love, boy makes some monumental mistake, and girl forgives him, and they end up happily ever after. So now we're teaching our teen girls that they should always forgive boys for all of their mistakes. And we're also teaching our teen boys that they should expect to be forgiven for every mistake that they make. Teenagers even fall victim to negative body image as well. The women cast in these movies are beautiful and thin, and the men are lean and muscular. In the film Crazy Stupid Love, Ryan Gosling takes off his shirt and Emma Stone goes, "Fuck, seriously? It's like you're photoshopped." Similar to my sister with her Halloween costume, I had a conversation with my brother a couple weeks ago about why he didn't want to pursue a girl that he liked. He said, "Well, I don't look like Chris Hemsworth." Not only do these movies have impractical plot lines, but they also make their viewers feel insecure about their appearance. Now we come to the most difficult target audience: older couples, divorced couples, and older single people. This age group is the least influenced by media because they've come to know better with time, but that doesn't mean they don't fall victim to it sometimes. Now, let me give you another example of a movie, The Holiday. Cameron Diaz is this successful Hollywood producer who gets cheated on by her boyfriend. So she decides to take a trip to Europe and spend some time alone. She, of course, meets the charming Jude Law, and they get drunk, they have sex, yada yada. At the end of the movie, she goes to his house to find that he's a widower with 2 daughters. Doesn't matter though, they still end up happily ever after. So let me get this straight. These children have lost their mother, and this man has lost his wife, but he knows this foreign woman for about a week, and now she's mommy. And what about her? She has this successful producing career back in the States. Does she just drop everything to join this family? A large portion of this age group can relate to this because half of marriages end in divorce nowadays. Scorned women and single divorced parents see this and think that there's hope for them. This age group also falls victim to negative body image as well. While most of the people in these movies are supposed to be in their 40s or 50s, they're free of any wrinkles or signs of aging. While most people at this age would probably get gray hair, actors like Jennifer Aniston and Will Smith look like they haven't aged since 1995. Now, children are definitely the most susceptible to this type of influence, but every age group falls victim to it. Our mass media directly targets people of all age groups, and the same can be said for producers of romance films, creating this toxic perception of love. Now, don't get it twisted. I love these movies. They're great movies. They're entertainment. I will definitely go home after this and watch Love Actually for the 57th time. I am saying take everything with a grain of salt. Happily ever after is not reality. Remember that real life is a little bit more complicated than that. Regardless, whether you're young and believe these silly ideas you've made up in your head, or you're older and maybe a little wiser, love plays this enormous role in all of our lives. We just have to be careful because what we see isn't reality. Not all women have hourglass figures. Not all men have perfectly chiseled bodies, and Santa Claus isn't real. Thank you.
And now, who says spooky season is only in October? Not junior electronic media and broadcasting student Michael Edgerton, who's here to talk to you about horror as a mirror of our collective psyche.
I'm Michael, and if you're anything like me, you think that we can get a little something from art. And not just pretty art or art that makes us feel good, particularly grim, unsettling art, stuff that looks like this. So this is a painting called The Trench by German impressionist Otto Dix. And Otto Dix, he was a kind of messed up little guy, messed up individual. He fought in World War I and then came home to fascism. And if there was one thing he hated more than war, it was Nazis. But he came home with a lot of troubles in a time where people said that war was glorious. It was a great thing. But then he saw stuff like this. He had to deal with this trauma, and he wanted people to see what he saw, feel what he felt. So he started doing more things like this. This is called the Scat Players. Scat is a game that was popularized by Austrian arm dealers and a couple of deformed veterans who are gambling. Portrait of himself as Mars, another thing dealing with his trauma. He saw a lot of shit. This one, Prague Street, another crippled veteran who is being passed a pamphlet by a member of the National Socialist Party. And this one, The War Cripples, which was put in Hitler's Degenerate Art Museum and subsequently destroyed for making Germany and war look bad. Now, after a while, people were like, Otto, why are you doing this? Why are you making all this creepy stuff? You're freaking people out. And so, he said, all art is exorcism. I paint dreams and visions too, the dreams and visions of my time. Painting is an effort to produce order. Order in me. Order in yourself. There's much chaos in me, much chaos in our time. I stumbled upon this quote in my freshman year seminar class for a project, and I've been thinking about it ever since. As a horror writer myself, kind of touched on it. It's got a little bit of a creepy element to it, talking about exorcism. And I decided that art isn't just exorcism. It's a cycle of exorcism and invocation. Now that sounds weird. I know, it should sound weird. But these cycles are everywhere. So if you'll bear with me, allow me to go with the classic example, the breakup song. We know how it goes. Musician gets dumped. Musician gets sad. Musician writes a song. Musician puts their feelings of heartbreak into said song. That is the exorcism. They've pulled out their feelings and made it manifest into this song. And exorcism in this context is really just a synonym for manifestation. But the magic trick happens when we listen to it. When you listen to this song, you start to project your own feelings of heartbreak onto it. You start to think about it, and it invokes those feelings within you. You've now just shared a very intimate experience with that artist. You may never meet, you probably will never meet them, but you two have just felt the same thing. You've thought the same thing. And we do this everywhere in our society. But you're talking to me, so we're going to talk about horror movie monsters. Because what are monsters but a manifestation of our fears? Some classics here. We're just going to run through the big hits, some of my faves. Oh, yes, I should mention to you, this is going to come up from time to time, but throughout generations, these cycles and what they mean, they change. What Dracula meant when he was written is totally different from what he means now. And it's something to be kind of cognizant of. Because fear, in of itself, is not necessarily a bad thing. I'd say it's pretty damn good that we're scared to go touch a tiger or like handle a snake, because you might die. So it's a positive thing. Some classics. My man Frank. an invocation of death, disturbing things. He is the man who came back from death in an attempt to exorcise this fear of man trying to be God. The Wolfman, the idea that man has some bestial nature within him and can snap at any point. That's the exorcism. So the invocation is a man who literally turns into a wolf and murders people at night. Dracula, one of my favorites. He's meant different things throughout the ages, but most of the time, the exorcism, it's rape, oppression, repressed sexuality. And so he normally appears as an older but handsome, kind of suave and mysterious man who also happens to suck the life out of young women, normally, in the tradition. Now, we'll move it along a little bit. We're hitting 1930. Things are getting real spicy over in Europe. World War II's starting. And Americans everywhere are terrified that the German blitzkrieg is coming to our shores. And that's when Orson Welles drops his War of the Worlds broadcast. If you're unfamiliar, big aliens with great war machines come to America and just destroy the American dream. White picket fences in flames, people dead everywhere. Caused panic. And it didn't cause panic because people were afraid of aliens. No. Everyone knew that was ridiculous. It caused panic because it invoked this fear of World War II coming to their shores. And that's one of the important things here. With any monster, any horror film, outright, we're not scared of what it's showing us. We're scared of what it represents. Which I will get to with a very fun one, the Red Scare. Oh, Godzilla 2. Godzilla is another one of the examples of things that change. A big radioactive lizard that was Japan's way of talking about their fear of nuclear annihilation. On the wake of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they had to find some way to deal with this trauma, so they found a monster, an invocation, to match their exorcism. Now for the Red Scare. Now, if Ayn Rand wrote horror, it would look like any of these. You have the Thing from Another World, Pod People from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Things appeared several times, but arguably always about communism. And they always come as these aliens from another place that can assume the identity of whoever you know. They could be your neighbor, they could be your wife, they could be your husband, they could be anybody. And you wouldn't know until it's too late. And it came from this deep-seated fear of communism, that your neighbor might have been a communist, that the actors you watched in movies might have been communists. But what do all these monsters have in common? They're all foreign threats. Godzilla comes from under the sea, Dracula comes from Transylvania, aliens come from outer space, and they all come to our shores to threaten the prosperity of a moral crusading America. That's because when a lot of these were coming out, we really viewed ourselves as the bastion of truth and moral good in a society that was corrupt and dark across the seas. And that was fine for a bit. It's good to feel good about yourself from time to time. Then something changed. We got Nixon. We got Kent State. We got things worsening in Vietnam, civil rights abuses. JFK is dead. MLK is dead. We didn't know what to think of ourselves anymore. We used to think monsters were coming from out there. Now the monsters were people we put in office, the person who bags your groceries, your neighbor. We had to reckon with this idea that we might not be who we think we are. We might be the villain. And so, directors who grew up in this time, writers who grew up in this time, realized they needed a new monster. We couldn't keep using the same old monsters to exercise our fears, to make us think about things that are disturbing us as a society. Which enters my favorite duo, Wes Craven and Fred. Now, if you're not a nerd like me and own like all 8 of these movies, unashamedly so at that. A little bit of background info. Freddy Krueger is a child murdering pedophile who, when he was alive, gets caught, gets out of prison on a technicality. His trial is deemed, gets thrown out, he's fine, he's on the streets again. And so the parents in this town that is like the perfect slice of American suburbia. I mean, their high school looks better than our college campus. They have white picket fences. The parents are all great, but also slightly abusive alcoholics on the down low. And, of course, you have the child murdering pedophile. And so when he gets out of prison, the parents gang together and they kill him. They burn him alive. They're like, yay, our problem is solved. Psych! Because now the embodiment of American nightmare is coming into people's dreams and killing them. He goes back and he kills the kids. And he keeps doing it. A little bit on notes there for it. And we return to this idea of exorcism and invocation. Now, if I tell you, hey, there's this guy who's going to come into your dreams and he's going to murder you, you go, oh, that's funny. It's laughable. You're going to call me a kook and just disregard me like that crazy guy at the gas station who just hangs out at midnight. But if I went, this child murdering pedophile just got released from prison and he's back at it again, you'd probably go, oh shit, that's just a headline. That's just news. So once more, we're not afraid of what we see, we're afraid of what it represents. And that's the point of this whole exorcism thing. We're getting it out. We're getting our fears out in a way that's manageable. Fear is abstract. It's hard to hold on to. You can say you're afraid of a tiger, and everyone knows why you're afraid of a tiger. You say you're afraid of ills within our society, you're afraid of some existential dread. That's hard to grasp. And things you can't grasp aren't manageable. So we make them manageable. And, of course, we carry on within this vein for years. And for a while in the 80s and 90s, the movies with the rise of neoconservatism got back to being the whole foreign threads. But then we got fun again with stuff like Jordan Peele's Us. Fantastic little flick. And if you're unfamiliar, you have what is the perfect slice of a new age American dream. The perfect suburban family, a funny husband, loving wife. They both have good jobs. The kids get along. They bicker sometimes, but they're a happy-go-lucky family. Until their exact doubles, called the Tethered, come up from outer ground and start killing people. Now, again, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, but the people in red, the Tethered, failed government experiment, duplicates of every American citizen supposed to help mind control. Again, flimsy premise. If I said that to you on the street, you would think I'm some crackhead, and rightly so. And in any other date and time, this would have been about communism. Exact duplicates who show up wearing red, a movie whose initials spell US, describing themselves as Americans, communism. But not today. Not today. Today, it's class struggles. It's divisions within our own country. Like I said, if I told you there were people coming up from underground, killing you, they look just like you, ridiculous. But if I said, there's groups of people who are so disenfranchised, who have been so rejected by our society that they have to resort to crime and violence to be able to survive? That's not news. That's old stuff. Everybody knows that. So we think, why? Why are we doing this? What's the point? Why are we scaring ourselves? I already talked about fear needing to be this manageable thing. We got to grasp it. We got to get a hold of it. And what better way through art? There is no better way. Otto Dix had to do it so he could retain his sanity and try to tell people, hey, maybe sending us off to war in trenches isn't as glorious as we thought. Wes Craven was thinking, man, what has happened to this country? I feel terrible. So he did stuff so we'd feel the same way. Just like with the breakup song, where you listen to it, you feel the same thing as the artist. You watch one of these movies, and you're starting to feel the same way that they feel about something. So, next time you're watching a horror movie, next time you're watching a slasher, between the splashes of blood, even if it's heavy on gory, light on story, think about what they were afraid of. Because chances are, they're trying to tell you something. They're trying to say that they're concerned about something, and they want you to be concerned about it too. Because once you're on the same playing field, you can start to fix it. Groovy.
So, how often do you use social media? And how often do you think for yourself? Well, next up is Junior Communication Studies student Karen Muma to talk about what we think we know about social media and selective processing.
Thank you all for coming. All of you except for the ones that projected AppState to lose in the opening rounds of March Madness. So, do you think for you? I want you to consider a couple of things. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So, do you have a social media, like an Instagram, or a Snapchat, or a LinkedIn, or Slack, or anything? Are you aware of the Bible? Are you aware of the Constitution? Brownie points if you can recite the preamble without having to look it up. So I've crafted this that kind of examines what I would consider 2021's discussion platform. You have Instagram, and you have Facebook, and TikTok, especially is a new one. Then you have Twitter, and then I have some pictures of comment sections, because those are where we like to share how we feel about certain stuff, whether it's dog videos, or it's like congressional decisions, or what the new school board movements are with the COVID-19. So, where do we get our information? We get them from three main places. We have our mobile mediums. We have Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter giving us our information. We have journalism sites like the New York Times or the Washington Post or Fox. And then you have news agencies like CNN and Fox News and CBC. And those are the main perpetrators of our news and information dissemination. So let's talk bias. I want to put right out that I'm not saying anyone is inherently biased. I'm saying that bias is manifested through society, through systems, through social media algorithms. So The Social Dilemma was a Netflix documentary that was released later last year, and it kind of examines the super big jump of social media algorithms and its impact on our lives, why we are suddenly so excessive when we use our phones, why we have an actual dopamine release when we get notifications or when we check our phone. And right after I watched it with a couple friends. We set time limits on our phones to try and prevent all of our phone interactivity. And then, but what are social media algorithms? And in short, social media algorithms are just calculations that your phone makes based on your phone interactivity, like how long you look at something or what you like and what you view, and it quantifies it. And social media algorithms aren't inherently bad, because in September, I got my heart broken. I was dumped, and my friends knew it, my mom knew it, and even my phone knew it. Because my TikTok changed from renegade dances and fun little cooking hacks to all these motivational videos, or I dare you to work on yourself. And so that was nice. So thanks, TikTok. But when it comes to more meaningful discussions and information discussion, you have to think about how they can be detrimental. We don't want to, when we think about congressional decisions or school board movements, or when you're sharing something of importance, you don't want to see what your phone predicts you should see. You want to have an objective view. And when you only see what your phone thinks you want to see based on your likes and your views and how long you look at something on your phone, that contributes to your confirmation bias. And when you contribute to your confirmation bias, you are just building a stronger foundation of what you already believe. And so, since we're talking about algorithms, I made a fun little equation, and it is social media algorithms plus your phone interaction plus your ideologies equals confirmation bias, because all of those together build your confirmation bias. So I'm essentially asserting you can't think for you because your phone thinks for you. You have information, your information that you contribute is ideological. Your phone shows you what you want to see, and it keeps showing you what you want to see. So where are the roots of our discussion? I narrowed it down to two founding documents that we tend to allude to in regular discussion, and that is the Constitution and the Bible. So let's talk about social media algorithms beyond the screen and the actual conversation, and I've broken it down a little bit. So the Constitution. The Constitution is considered the supreme law of the land, and it was written in 1787. And if you want to check that, it's just going to mess up your social media algorithm, and I know I'm right. But the Constitution was written to kind of act as an outline for how our democracy should function. Again, it is an outline. So I want to tell you a little story. I had a professor once tell me that when he has acquired adequate tenure and he has amassed some in his 401k, he's going to be in a debate with a student about something. And the student is going to say what everyone likes to say when they're arguing, that it's my right. And Mr. Professor is going to pull out his handy-dandy pocket constitution, and he's going to chuck it at the student. And he's going to say, prove me wrong, or prove me right, or whatever. And in the unlikely scenario where the student flips to the exact article and section, and says, here, it's my right to free speech. We'll use that example. Then the professor is going to be proven wrong. But in the more likely situation, the student's just going to be taken aback for the fact that they got a book chucked at him when they were arguing. And like I said, the reason the student is wrong and that it's not his right, even though he might think it is, and it's because the Constitution is an outline, and there are various exceptions, and those are called Supreme Court cases. Supreme Court cases outline the exceptions or the limitations of all of the rights that are listed in our Constitution. So, like in Schneck versus United States, it says that you are restricted with your free speech if it poses a clear and present danger to society. So you can't shout fire in a movie theater and not expect to get away with it. So, yes. Now, here's an example of like a social media allusion to the Constitution. I have a tweet from Senator Ron Johnson, and it says, I'm concerned that Congress's involvement in Section 230 reform may lead to more harm than good, and that's the part I'm focusing on. But specifically, Section 230. In short, Section 230 is basically an article that says that big social media CEOs of like Twitter and Facebook are not liable for the content that their users post. And so it's basically a get-out-of-jail-free card for all the CEOs. And Section 230 is a small part of the Communications Decency Act, which is a small part of the free speech clause in the First Amendment of the Constitution. So it all builds. So that allusion goes back to the Constitution. You are thinking from a legal, ideological basis. So now let's talk about the Bible. The Bible is a Greek translated word from La Biblia, which literally means books. It's a book of books. And it's a collection of books that has wise words and laws and stories and prayers. And I'm going to go over a little bit of how it's formatted. Now, I am no religious scholar, but you look at a Bible, you have the Old Testament and you have the New Testament. And the distinguishing factor between those testaments is Jesus dying on the cross and dying for our sins. And so you go into the New Testament with new attitudes, with new ways of thinking, and you have saints that write the first couple chapters of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and so you have a new way of thinking. And when you think about the Bible, you don't just think about the New Testament, you don't just think about the Old Testament, you think about the whole thing. And so let's take same-sex marriage. In the Old Testament, you have Genesis that says a marriage is between a man and a woman. And then Jesus goes and dies on the cross. And then you go into Corinthians, which is in the New Testament of the Bible, and it says love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, love is a lot of things. But it no longer says marriage is between a man and a woman, love is love. So this is a comment section I took from a press release of the Vatican statement concerning same-sex marriage. And if you look at the first comment, it says, according to Jesus in the book of Mark, blah, blah, blah. And then you have in other comments, you say it has allusions to Catholicism, which is the denomination of Christianity, which ultimately references the Bible. So this is an example of people thinking religiously, ideologically. So you're going to ask me, Karen, what am I supposed to do with this? And I'm going to tell you, technology is a beautiful thing. Because of technology, we were able to complete this year. We were able to do school online. Classes were able to continue, and work was able to get done. We were able to do a lot of things with technology, but technology is made up of social media algorithms, so you have to think for yourself, because those social media algorithms are going to do the thinking for you if you let them. So when you let those social media algorithms think for you, and you let what shows up on your phone say that is what is truth and that is what you contribute, then that is not, you are just selectively thinking. You are not thinking for you, and that just contributes to your confirmation bias. And when you are doing this, you are holding yourself accountable, and holding yourself accountable can make a world of difference for a lot of things. So I have come up with 3 little equations to help us remember this. So in my first equation, we have Constitution, our outline for democracy, plus Supreme Court decisions. So the limitations and the exceptions to our Constitution equals the whole picture. So when you say, yeah, it's my right, well, make sure you consider your limitations and your exceptions. And then when you're thinking, from your religious ideologies, and you say, you have to think about the Old Testament of the Bible plus the New Testament of the Bible, and that is your whole picture. And then lastly, TikTok, or really insert any social media, LinkedIn, Snapchat, whatever, plus a journalism site, so you can have a comparison, so you don't take what you see at face value without comparing it to an accredited journalism site. That gives you your whole picture. Thank you.
Were those not 3 of the coolest beans you've ever seen? Let's give another round of applause for our awesome speakers, Audrey, Michael, and Karen. To extend another thank you to Dr. Richards, without whom his leadership and support, Panorama would only be about a 180-degree view. Come on, guys. That was a really well-rounded joke. Thank you. People are laughing at home. You can't hear it. It's all right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, and I hope everyone has a really good night.